All right, welcome everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. There's still some people filtering in, so we'll just make room for them as they come in because we got a pretty packed room tonight. So thank you all for that. My name is Tori Anderson. I'm a facilitator with Confluence Decisions based here in Missoula. My goal tonight is to make sure this is an educational and civil meeting with opportunity for you all to learn from each other and also share your own feedback and opinions. So thank you for being here and being part of this. We are here tonight to discuss the future of the Roadless Rule and the management of our national forests. The Roadless Rule has been in place since 2001. It limits road construction and timber harvest in certain areas of national forest, while still allowing for a wide range of management activities. Management activities that are still allowed include wildfire suppression, habitat restoration, recreation management, and certain forest health treatments. The rule is designed to preserve the natural integrity of these areas, maintaining their ecological and recreational value. By doing so, it safeguards clean water, wildlife habitats, and outdoor recreation opportunities that are essential to Montana's way of life. Nationwide, the Roadless Rule safeguards around 58 million acres. Here in Montana, it protects around 6 million acres, or about a third of our total national forest land here in Montana. The Lolo National Forest contains 767,000 acres of inventoried roadless areas. I encourage you all to look at the handout you received when you walked in for more stats about how the Roadless Rule impacts management on the Lolo National Forest. So as these numbers demonstrate, we can see this is a rule with enormous impact. And given its impact, it's ever so important that the Forest Service understand what the public thinks of this rule and the potential effect that it could have on our lives. Yet, since the Forest Service announced last summer their plans to rescind this rule, they have yet to hold a single public engagement meeting on this topic. To address this, several groups have come together to organize this meeting in an opportunity to provide feedback to the Forest Service. So our organizing partners for this meeting series include Wild Montana, Business for Montana's Outdoors, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Trout Unlimited, Montana Backcountry Horsemen, the Wilderness Society, Montana Wildlife Federation, Mountain Mamas, National Parks Conservation Association, the Sierra Club, and Montana Audubon. So our time here tonight is broken down into two main parts. We'll start with panelists' presentations. So we have three panelists here who have graciously agreed to share their knowledge and experience with you all so we can better understand how the Roadless Rule impacts our lives. After that, we will have opportunity for public comment. These will be 2-minute public comments on record. After this evening, the full transcription of tonight will be submitted to the Forest Service in the upcoming Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS, public comment period. That draft EIS is expected to be released late March, early April, but whenever it's released, there will be a public comment period, and this transcript will be submitted to it. So know that everything is being recorded today. And we also have Missoula Community Access Television here, so it's being recorded by them as part of a media assistance grant donated by MCAT. So thank you for that. All right, we'll now start with the panelist presentations. So I'll invite all our panelists up to the front of the room here and take a seat. I'm going to introduce them one by one as they go. And yeah, first up, we have Jim Birchfield, So Jim he served as Dean of the College of Forestry and Conservation at the University of Montana from 2008 to 2015. He retired from this post in August 2015. Trained as both a forester and social scientist, he previously held positions as director of the Boley Center for People and Forests at the University of Montana, director of the International Forestry Seminar Program at the University of Michigan, policy analysis for the U.S. Forest Service International Program Office, and field forester for the Forest Service in various locations in the U.S. His research and teaching interests continue to revolve around methods to promote effective public engagement in decisions on public lands and protected areas. He currently leads a multi-party group of landowners, scientists, and managers in a landscape-level restoration project in western Montana. Let's welcome Jim.
Thank you, Tori. It's quite an honor to be able to address this crowd. There are people here that I know, and when I look out at this beautiful evening, I think, my goodness, people really care about their public lands in this town, and it's wonderful to be a part of a community that's like that. Well, what I want to do tonight is to emphasize the significance of unroaded areas on our public lands. And you're going to hear from Greg and Trish the significance that plays to wildlife and fish, to us as people who enjoy those lands, and to the whole idea of being someone who lives in Montana. Because the idea of wildness is becoming more and more difficult to find. And to take these significant chunks of our land, remember, we are the owners, to open them up to other kinds of development under really kind of tenuous reasoning, I believe is a very misguided idea. And let me explain a little bit about the context and why I think this is not a very good idea. First of all, let's just go back in time a little bit and remember that our national forests were set aside for multiple uses, for recreation and wildlife and water and even for timber production, because after World War II, we needed a lot of houses. Matter of fact, we need a lot of houses now. But what happened is what historian Paul Hurt called the conspiracy of optimism. We were going to be able to manage these forests so well, they would be just infinitely productive, and we'd have this sustainable yield that would go on forever and ever. And we just roaded the heck out of the national forest. Probably the biggest road system on the planet is in the Forest Service's National Forest Road System. And roads have a strong impact on the forest, as you're going to hear from the other two speakers. And we recognize that a lot of this activity was not making money. We had to subsidize it. So there's a real economic dimension to forest management. Yet we kept going on this route until it became really obvious with our learning about ecology, and particularly disturbance ecology, that maybe all this harvesting wasn't such a good idea in all these different places. That there's a real value to protecting these large areas for cold water, for biodiversity, and as you're going to hear, for our own experiences that make us feel like not only someone who is a human being, but someone who is connected to the rest of nature. And I can't overemphasize how important that is to people. So we've gotten into this situation with all these other things happening that have been perturbations in the forest besides our own management. And of course, the two giant things we think of are climate change and our fire suppression proclivity. In other words, we live in this fire-adapted ecosystem, and for 70 years, we just put all the fires out. And we created a monster. We created a situation where we have so much fuel in the forest that when we have fires under very high temperatures from climate change and very dry conditions, we get fires so severe that it's going to take a long time for those forests to come back. Now, I have a bias. I love trees. I want to keep the forest a forest. And we can see now that the forest is in very serious trouble unless we do something to manage our forests differently, especially with respect to fire. Now, the argument for opening up the roadless area that's offered by people in the administration is that we have to go in there and road so we can reduce forest density and refuels, and we can make sure we can put these fires out, and we'll protect the forest because we're going to have this access to them. Now, there's two very serious problems with this. One is that 3/4 of the fires are started by us. Ignitions are started mostly by people. And if we put roads into the forest, that means that we're going to have more ignitions and exacerbate the problem. The second really crazy thing about this is that if we see critical areas that need to have fuel reduction, we can do treatments in roadless areas, and we have. We've done lots of treatments here on the Lolo to be able to reduce fuels in critical areas. And finally, it's not really a high probability of success to be able to treat these mostly high elevation forests, which are evolved around high severity, low frequency fires. That means really hot fires very long apart. And these trees don't respond the way that lower elevation forests, like our ponderosa pine, larch forests, and these lower elevations do, to treatments. So, we also have the realities of how much money and effort and skill it takes to be able to manage a forest well in this context of so much disturbance. Human beings entering with mountain bikes, all kinds of invasive species being introduced by people, climate change, huge windstorms. There's a lot going on. So my advocacy is for treating forests well and focusing on the areas where we might have some kind of practical, real impact. The roadless areas are roadless for a reason. They're remote, they're difficult to access with roads. If you put roads in, they're very expensive, and then you have to maintain them. And then they have all these negative effects that you're going to hear about for wildlife and people. So why work there when we don't have the money or the capacity to be able to work in the forest where we can have a positive impact? Now, the positive impact takes a lot of work, and if you're in for a dime, you're in for a dollar. You go treat these low elevation forests, not only do you reduce fuels, you have to apply prescribed fire for this to be effective. And there's all kinds of barriers to do that. People hate the smoke. There's difficulties in actually being able to find the people to do this work. And then you've got to go treat it every 10, 20 years to make sure the fuels stay like they used to when the Native Americans would burn every 8 to 10 years to be able to sustain the ecosystem that, we see in a few places around Missoula where those treatments have been done. You go up to Patty Canyon or soon in Blue Mountain, it looks fantastic, but there's been a lot of effort there. We simply don't have the wherewithal to be able to treat all of these areas, and why not focus on the places where we can make a difference? We might not be able to save all the forests because the forests are in real trouble from climate change, but we can make a difference in the places where we have the skill to be able to do so. Now, how is it that we have this kind of skill? Well, Missoula, to me, is the center of the universe when it comes to forestry. I'm looking around this room, and the talent in this room is nothing short of extraordinary. And we want to be able to engage. I've worked with some forest collaboratives with amazing people who are interacting with fine Forest Service officials who listen to us. And the reality of public engagement in public land decisions is you make better decisions. And we can do that. But what's happened recently is the Forest Service has been closed off from the public. The process that has been foisted upon us to be able to accept this rescission of the roadless rule without public meetings, as was mentioned, is patently against the rules and the traditions and the laws guiding the management of federal public lands. This process is something we don't want. And I'm so proud of of all the sponsors that you've seen here, particularly Wild Montana, for calling attention to this and bringing us together. Because we have agency. We have political power. Where are our elected representatives right now? 99% of the people who commented in that little 30-day window when that came up said, we don't want this rule rescinded. We want these roadless areas. Now, it's an election year, folks. This is the time. This is the time to say, hey, we're the owners. We have a say in this. You pay attention to us, or we're going to get some new management up there, because this is your job to defend what we care about. I can go on, but I'm really curious. I know Greg and Trish, and this is going to be very interesting what they say. And probably more interesting is going to be your questions and your ideas, what you are thinking about that we can do. But I want to advocate for forest management. I want to advocate for we can do some things to be able to protect our forest. I think standing back is not the right solution. It's the right time to do things in those areas where we can make a difference. But it's the wrong place to try to do that in the roadless areas. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jim. All right, next up we have Greg Munther. Greg was raised exploring the mountains of Idaho and has spent his last 50 years in Missoula. For 12 years, he served as fisheries biologist for the Lolo National Forest, as well as the Bitterroot, Deer Lodge, and Helena Forest for a portion of that time. He represented fish and wildlife on a core team developing the Lolo Forest Management Plan. Following the plan, he coordinated development of a travel plan that implemented the forest plan's travel commitments on the forest. For 10 years, he was district ranger for the 330,000-acre 9-mile ranger district. The district encompasses most of the proposed Great Burn Wilderness, as well as other roadless areas. Let's welcome Greg.
Thanks. I'm so encouraged to see this room filled with people. I mean, all the things that go on in Missoula, and this room is packed. And I got to ask, how many people intend to stay engaged in this roadless issue to the end? That is incredible. And I'm going to beg you to stay also involved with the Lolo Forest Plan as well, because it's equally important, and they are integrated and linked. So remember, the forest plan is being revised now. It's extremely important that these roadless areas be incorporated in the forest plan. And that only is going to happen if you guys stand up and make it happen. So my 22 years on the forest, I wasn't here that long, and I got initiated when the Forest Supervisor, Orville Daniels, chose to take the Lolo as a pilot forest to develop one of the first forest plans in the country. Basically, it was a pilot project. As a pilot project, there were a lot of interests. Every interest in the country was interested in how this forest plan was going to come out. And I don't say it lightly, but the timber industry was making sure that their interests are well represented throughout, starting from the Washington office, as well as the timber industry. It was strongly had a timber utilization bent. That being said, I got to give a lot of credit to the team that developed the Lolo Forest Plan, because nearly a quarter of the plan's allocated acres go to some roadless protection or wilderness. That's pretty remarkable in that environment of heavy output of timber. So I say that not lightly. It took a lot of work, but I say that because that makes a mark in the sand right now where we stand. We stand with not only much of the roadless areas protected and allocated to roadless protection, barring timber harvest, but we also created the rattlesnake wilderness and recreation areas during that same time period, which is pretty permanently protected. So those being said, Now we're going to enter a new era where it's kind of spinning the bottle where we're going to end up with the management. But it's extremely important. I would say that also, in addition to the roadless allocations and wilderness allocations and proposed wilderness allocations, we also set aside 75,000 acres, I think it was, for grizzly protection. So even though timber harvest could take place, it had to take place with respect to the needs of grizzly bears. So that being said, I guess I'll move on to specific to fish and wildlife resources. You know, much wildlife need roadless areas. I'd start out by saying we as managers and owners of this public land deserve that these wildlife species habitat is well protected. And I'll start out with grizzly bears. Quite frankly, grizzly bears need the corridor down the state line for continuity between populations. There's a reason that there's grizzly bears pioneering into the Bitterroot Range. It's because they survived coming out of Glacier or the Scapegoat or wherever they came from and made it down. Without those corridors, how could you possibly delist grizzly bears? So those people that want to delist grizzly bears should stand tall for roadless areas because that's key to maintaining those populations. The same goes with wolverine. Wolverine on the cusp of being listed. Those people that don't want species listed should look at how we're going to retain wolverines on the landscape, and it ties to roadless areas. So if you don't like ESA listings and the constraints that it poses on you, take care of the roadless areas. That's number one. And as you know, grizzly bears need roadless areas. Roads equal mortality. The judges have said that over and over again with the Forest Service, who have tried to, I guess, soft pedal the roads, existing roads on the landscape and say they aren't important because they have a gate on them. But roads, whether they're closed or open, are conduits for humans to penetrate the heart of whatever landscape is there out there on that. And the judges have held it. You cannot have grizzly bears in a lot of road density. So again, roadless areas are the key to protecting grizzly bears. As well as the other thing that roadless areas protect for wildlife is they're secure habitat for sensitive species. And of paramount importance in western Montana is elk. You know, elk, where we lose roadless protection, we lose elk populations on public lands, not because they can't run around and some of them survive, but they're driven to private lands where they have refuge. So those people that like to hunt and like to see elk on public lands need to recognize that roadless areas are key on the landscape to have those areas out there. Where it's continually eroded, those elk can hardly wait to run to private land and where there's some refuge where they're not hunted. Also, you know, roads are conduits for invasive weed species. You've all seen the knapweed, but we've got all the weeds that you can think of, cheatgrass and so on. All those things are invasive, usually promoted by the disturbance of road construction and maintenance and the bare soils that opens up, as well as their conduits for vehicles going up and down and transporting those weed seeds. So that's another avenue that wildlife is damaged with those invasive species. And last is old growth. You know, during my time on the Lolo, we took on ponderosa pine pretty heavily. That was really the money tree in western Montana, was big, large ponderosa pine. And when we did our analysis, we found out that less than 8% of the landscape ponderosa pine landscape still had large ponderosa pine on them. They've been cut. They've been taken to the mills and they've been shipped somewhere else. And so roadless areas, some of those pines are in those roadless areas. So keeping those roadless areas protects old growth habitats. So then I'll move on to fisheries. Like I say, I spent 12 years on the Lolo as a fisheries biologist, and I have a lot of experience with roads and fish, and it isn't positive. I don't care how you want to cut it. It isn't positive. Without roads, these watersheds provide cold, clean water not only on-site, but off-site as well. They contribute the waters downstream that are cold and carry on into the larger drainages and allow those drainages to have suitable water temperatures and clean, cold water. And I just listened to a cohort of mine, Lad Notek, who just described the situation of bull trout in western Montana. Bull trout are winking out. Bull trout are winking out because of water temperatures. And the refugia, the best, most stable population of bull trout is in the Fish Creek drainage. Where's the Fish Creek drainage? It's in the proposed Great Burn Wilderness. So that is the only stable population of bull trout remaining in this general area. So it implores us to take care of bull trout if we care of them as a species. Then road construction in roadless areas tends to also interrupt the connectivity within the drainage of fish to be able to move up and down drainages. I spent a lot of my time trying to work with engineers to provide adequate fish passage on structures, but adequate fish passage costs money. So a lot of our upper streams no longer had fish access from the spawning fish couldn't get up to spawn. And actually, I used to take a fish shocker, backpack shocker out on small streams with engineers trying to convince them and show them right on site where little headwater streams that only had little pockets of water during the summertime, just little pockets you could step across, had a little bitty cutthroat trout. And those cutthroat trout do really well because there aren't any predators up that high. So those little trout survive, and the next big runoff the next spring, they're off and downstream. And if you catch a cutthroat down on the Clark Fork or in the Blackfoot or whatever, it may have originated way up high in those watersheds. And you know, I mentioned the temperatures. Every time you have a road system, it increases water temperature. It also interferes with the natural hydrology of a stream course. Every time you make a cut across the hillside, and it interrupts that groundwater that's being transported under the water, and it takes it out to a road and then down quicker to the stream. So you end up not having that late summer storage of water when you cut it and take it back out to a stream immediately. So I want to just kind of go over a couple of misconceptions that we often said about roadless areas. One is that we need to manage fuels, and fuels up on the forest are bad, and so we need to reduce the fuel loading on forests. And I just want to point out that we also, right immediately, we have Tyler Kitchen out east of town is a Forest Service fuels reduction project in a roadless area. So yes, you can do fuels treatment in roadless areas. And the other thing that I guess kind of is overplayed is that we need to control fire because of our communities, to protect our communities. We need to go into roadless areas. Well, anybody that looks on the map can see where the roadless area is versus where the habitation is, and it's usually several miles apart. We don't need to go up on top of the mountain to save a community in the valley. And that's a common misconception. Another one is that we can't have motorized use in roadless areas. We have motorized trails, and you can build a motorized trail if you want to in a roadless area. It's permitted under the, and you can build a road to go fight fire in a wilderness or in a roadless area. It's specifically stated that road construction for fire suppression is a viable reason to put a road in. I might caution, though, that over on the Fish Creek side, Fish Lake side on the Clearwater side, Fish Lake has a road right to it on the proposed Great Burn Wilderness that basically put a cherry stem in the Idaho side of the Great Burn because they never bothered to close the road after they built a road in to suppress that fire. On the other hand, I want to just mention that we we were able to suppress a fire when I was district ranger. We had a fire come over from Idaho, big fire, and rather than put roads into the proposed Great Burn, we were able to convince the fire people that we can just go in and suppress it with helicopter water drops on ridge tops. And we drew a 3,500 acre containment line around that fire and contained it with hardly any cost and no roads. So.
Greg, I think we have to move on now. That was really great, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Trisha Drobeck. Trisha is the executive director of Run Wild Missoula. Originally from Portland, Oregon, she moved to Missoula to attend the University of Montana, where she studied journalism and later discovered competitive running. Trisha went on to qualify for the 2016 Olympic Marathon Trials and is a 4-time winner of the Missoula Marathon. Before joining Run Wild Missoula in 2021, she spent 15 years working in the aquatics industry. When she's not working with the running community, she enjoys getting out on their trails with her husband, Andy, and their 2 kids, Maisie and Micah. Let's welcome Trisha.
Hello? Okay, just making sure it works. I'm going to use the lectern here. All right, I'm going to ask you guys a quick question. Thumbs up, you agree. Thumbs down, you don't agree. Many of the places that have shaped my connection to Montana, places where I've explored, built lasting friendships, exist today because they are protected as roadless areas. Okay, look around. Yeah, that's a big deal. Thank you, Wild Montana, for this amazing opportunity to speak, and to all the organizers. 2 thumbs up over here. All right, I like it. Thank you to all the organizers of this event. My name is Trisha Drobeck, as Tori said, and I serve as the executive director of Run Wild Missoula. With nearly 2,600 members, Run Wild Missoula is one of the largest running clubs in the Northwest. We are a nonprofit dedicated to promoting and supporting running and walking for all people of ages, abilities, and backgrounds. We do this through a host of different things, and one of them is included is trail stewardship. Our advocacy, sorry, I have a little bit of a cold that I'm getting over. Our advocacy and trail stewardship arm is called Montana Trail Crew, and it focuses on fostering a strong and connected trail community. Through this work, we organize trail maintenance days, seasonal trail classes, the Mountain Running Film Festival, public lands advocacy efforts, the City to Sky trail races, educational programs such as Becoming a Wild Runner, trail runs, and more. And as the sport of trail running continues to grow, we hope Montana Trail Crew serves as a vehicle for caring and maintaining our local trails, while also helping connect Montana's geographically sprawling trail running community. Trail races can and do take place on Montana's roadless areas, offering runners the opportunity to experience these landscapes in meaningful and memorable ways. Events such as the Elkhorn Endurance Runs, the Crazy Mountains 100, and the Devil's Backbone Ultra all traverse terrain that includes or borders on designated roadless areas. These events rely on the very qualities that roadless areas protect: quiet landscapes, intact ecosystems, and long stretches of uninterrupted trail. For runners, they provide a rare opportunity to move through some of Montana's most wild and undeveloped terrain, while fostering a deep appreciation for the public lands that make these experiences possible. But races are just the beginning. Trail running depends on a connected network of trails, and many of our favorite routes exist, especially because surrounding landscape has remained largely undeveloped. Last spring, a Run Wild Missoula group traveled to the Great Burn to run a loop around Heart Lake in the Hoodoo Roadless Area, the largest roadless area managed by the Forest Service in our region. What the group found there was something that is becoming increasingly rare: quiet, solitude, challenge, and a deep sense of immersion into nature. Another day last summer, some friends pulled me into an adventure in the Rattlesnake. I'm generally a road runner, but this was quite an experience for me. I biked up the Rattlesnake corridor to the base of Mineral Mountain. Then we ran to the Forest Service lookout at the top. And from the summit, you're surrounded by 270 degrees of wilderness. We came back the same way we went in, and it ended up being one of my favorite days of the year, and my quads were very sore. What made that experience so special, besides the amazing trail chatter with friends, was the feeling of moving through an intact landscape. We didn't constantly cross roads. We didn't hear engines. We didn't navigate industrial infrastructure. Instead, we moved through continuous forest along a clean stream and through a habitat that hasn't been carved by development. For many of us, a long run in the backcountry isn't just about fitness. It's about building a relationship to the land. Experience like a race, a weekend adventure, or even an after-work summer summit shape how people value and care about public lands. When someone spends hours moving through a space, watching the light change, crossing streams, seeing wildlife, that connection becomes personal. And when that connection becomes personal, people begin to care deeply about protecting places that give them those experiences. At Run Wild Missoula and Montana Trail Crew, we have seen that connection grow stronger every year. More and more people are looking to give back, and we've seen a significant increase in volunteers who want to participate in trail work and stewardship. Because of that enthusiasm, we've steadily expanded our number of trail work days so people can care for the lands and the trails and the landscapes that they love. And it goes just beyond maintaining trails. We also have volunteers stepping up to help educate new runners and new outdoor users, sharing knowledge about trail etiquette, wildlife encounters, route navigation, and responsible recreation. That growing interest has allowed us to expand our educational programming as well, helping build a stronger and more informed outdoor community. The kind of experience matters deeply to people here and beyond. Missoula's trail running community is large and continues to grow. Thousands of people participate in trail running events, in training groups, and outdoor recreation clubs throughout the year. And many of them regularly use trails that are adjacent or inside roadless areas. Outdoor recreation is also a major driver of Montana's economy, and Missoula is very much the hub of that activity. People travel here to run, to hike, to bike, and experience these landscapes. The sense of remoteness and natural character that roadless areas provide is a big part of what makes this place so special. And it's one of the reasons so many people choose to live here in the first place. And that's exactly where the importance of roadless areas come in for outdoor recreation in Montana. Adopted in 2001, the idea behind the Roadless Rule is really quite simple. Protect some of the last intact landscapes within our national forest while still allowing many forms of recreation and responsible forest use. In Montana alone, the rule protects roughly 6 million acres of public lands and nationwide safeguards nearly 58 million acres. Importantly, roadless doesn't actually mean closed. These places are to remain open for recreation. What makes them unique is that they remain largely free from new road development and the fragmentation that comes with that. One example that many in the running community look forward to every year is the RAT Bob. That stands for Run Across the Bob Marshall Wilderness. It's an annual 50-mile trek through the Bob that has been a staple in the Western Montana running lore for nearly 2 decades. Each July, volunteer run leaders carefully select a new running route through the Bob. And runners spend a full day moving across one of the most remote and spectacular landscapes in the state. What began as a small group of ambitious Missoulians has gradually grown to include runners from communities all across Montana, along with shorter distance options that now even more people can experience the landscape. Healthy lands support recreation. Roadless areas also protect the ecological qualities that make outdoor recreation possible in the first place, which also I will note that my other speakers have noted. Clean water, healthy forests, intact wildlife habitat, and resilient ecosystems all contribute to better outdoor experiences. Streams that aren't degraded by poorly maintained roads support fish populations and healthy watersheds. Connected forests allow for wildlife and natural processes to thrive. These things matter when you're casting a fly rod, hiking with your family, or heading out for a long run. Roadless areas also help maintain access in the long term. The Forest Service is already massively backlogged, as our other speakers have noted, billions of dollars nationwide. Building new roads only adds to that burden. These lands are far more than lines on a map or words in a policy. For trail users, they are places we spend our time, we build friendship, and we reconnect with the landscape that makes Montana so special. Roadless areas allow us to experience long stretches of uninterrupted trail, quiet forests, and wild places that still feel whole. Those experiences don't just inspire people to recreate here, they inspire people to care for the lands and to volunteer to help steward them. Protecting roadless areas helps ensures that our future generations will have the same opportunity to explore, run, and build their own connection to these remarkable places. So I ask you, isn't that something worth holding on to? Thank you.
All right. Thank you again to all our panelists. You're welcome to sit back down now. Yeah, that was great. Thanks for sharing your experience with us. And now we're going to go into the comment period of the meeting. So a few ground rules before we get going. Listen to learn. So somebody might bring up a perspective tonight that you haven't thought of. There's no need to reach consensus tonight. I encourage you to listen and see maybe they think of something a little differently than you. So we're here to learn from each other. Be respectful. No name calling, any kind of threats, that sort of thing. I think that goes without saying. Make space for others. Physically, too, if you have a chair next to you right now, and we have a lot of people standing, so you can kind of raise your hand and let them sit there. But also in terms of, wow, lots of chairs. In terms of making space for others to speak, we're going to follow a 2-minute comment time limit. There's tons of you tonight, and we only have about 40 minutes left. So with 2 minutes, that'll go really quickly. And with that, just make sure you follow that limit and then raise your hand and wait for the mic before speaking. We're actually going to have everyone kind of line up here once I get going so we can go through the comments pretty quickly and hopefully get to more of them. So then a few guidelines for providing a comment in a way that's very useful to the Forest Service. Remember, these comments and the transcription will go to the Forest Service in DC. That's where all this is coming out of. So provide not only your opinion, but your reason for that opinion, whatever it is. Be specific, constructive, and then also please state your name and where you live before you speak. If your name's really hard to spell, if you could, or to sound out, if you could spell it out for our court reporter who's transcribing everything, that would be great. Yeah, and then I'm just going to leave a map of the Lolo National Forest on in the background. But with that, would anybody raise your hand if you would like to speak first? Yes, right there. And yeah, you can come up as well if you want to just start forming a line here so we can move through them really quickly. That would be great. All right.
Maybe we'll start.
Good, thank you. My name is Charles Birch, and I'm from Polson, Montana. And for me, the value in the lands that we love and we want to protect and roadless areas really has nothing to do with ourselves. It has to do with all of the species of animals and plants that live there, and there needs to be a place for those. And the thing that I've discovered that's really pretty alarming is that if you take the mass of all the mammals in the world, 60% of that mass is from cattle and domesticated animals. Another 36% of that mass is humans. So that leaves 4% of the mass is wild animals. And those wild animals need a place to be, to live and survive, and they should be valued just as much as we value ourselves. And there needs to be a place for them. I graduated from high school in 1970, and I graduated from Hellgate High here in Missoula. Since 1970, 73% of the wildlife in this country has decreased. That means 73% of the wildlife is less than it was in 1970. So my perspective is very simple, is that we need to value the animals and the plants out there as much as we value ourselves. So thank you.
I forgot to state, I'm going to play my triangle when you have 30 seconds left, and then again at the end of your period. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Mary Rohr, R-O-E-H-R, and I live in Montana. I am super active in Wild Montana, and what I do with them is I lead a lot of hikes into the wilderness, the roadless areas, the proposed wilderness areas to show people the beauty of it. A lot of people don't even know what the wilderness is or what a roadless area is, and so we want to educate people in that so that we can have them have a stake in these areas and want to take care of them. I personally have dedicated the rest of my life, I don't know how long it's going to last, but to these causes, to keep the wilderness wild, to keep the roadless areas roadless, to get proposed areas into law. I love the wilderness. All I want to do every day is be out in the wilderness and have my Zen moment. But it doesn't matter how much we love these areas and want to have them. If we don't do the advocacy work, forget it. That's what I have come to realize is the most important part of this whole thing. Everybody here loves the area, but what can we do? Okay, we've got to talk to the Forest Service like we're doing tonight, and we've got to contact our legislators. Wild Montana has an advocacy line that you can do that. Super easy. Thank you.
When I ring the triangle the first time, you still have 30 seconds left. So, yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Chris Serveen, S-E-R-V-H-E-E-N. I'm a bear guy, and I'm also an elk hunter. And anybody who hunts elk knows that the best places to find elk are where there's no roads. And where the roads end, that's where you start looking for the elk. And roading all these places, these thousands of square miles, will deeply affect us elk hunters and the elk that are trying to mind their own business and stay away from us. Now, regarding bears, we've worked really hard to recover grizzly bears in Montana. And as we built those plans, we depended on the Roadless Rule. And that was created in 2001. There were over 600 public meetings in the creation of that rule. Tens of thousands of people commented and were involved in that. The fact that the Forest Service now wants to rescind the rule without any public meetings doesn't mean the Forest Service wants to do that. That's the politicians that are making that decision. So this whole thing is a political decision. And for the first time, unfortunately, in the history of our country, we have a president who doesn't care one bit about nature and wild things. And that is the root of the problem that we have today. Now, as I said, we depended on the Roadless Rule when we built the habitat standards that we could depend on so that grizzly bears will be here in the future for our kids and our grandkids. But if the Roadless Rule is rescinded, that means that thousands of square miles of grizzly bear habitat will be open to roading. And if that happens, the management plans we built for grizzly bears will be invalidated. They'll be gone. We built a management plan for the Yellowstone system, for the Northern Continental Divide, which we call the Bob Marshall Glacier Complex. And those two plans depend a tremendous amount on the Roadless Rule. And let me just repeat it. If the roadless rule is rescinded, then the management plans for grizzly bears that are necessary to delist grizzly bears are invalid. And we'd have to start all over again, and grizzly bears can never be delisted. So speak up, make a difference, and it's really nice to see everybody here tonight. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Josh Liljedahl, Liljeddahl. I live in Florence, Montana. I am here today because I'm a chapter leader of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and I'm representing Backcountry Hunters and Anglers as well. Just want to say thank you to Wild Montana for putting this on, and also to everybody for showing up and making your voices heard. As you heard tonight, we know that punching roads into our roadless areas are going to degrade the habitats of our big game animals. It's going to wreck a lot of the clean, cold waters that we have for our native fish species. But another thing we haven't really talked about is how it's going to ruin our uncrowded, pristine Montana wilderness experience. Montana and your backcountry areas is one of the envies of all the states across the country. I was born and raised in North Carolina, and I'm here to tell you that there is no other state like it who has this amount of public land, and especially roadless areas to access. With these roads, we will see, as we previously heard, our elk push to private land. With these roads, we are going to see our trout streams degraded. We're going to see our trout populations start to decline and disappear. And we're also going to see more and more people in these places that we all love, and they are not going to be the same, and we will not get that back. I just want to say once again, thank you all for coming. It is very important for you all to speak up and have your voices heard, because this is our opportunity. The Forest Service and the government are not listening, so today is our time, and thank you all very much.
Hello, I'm Andy Kula, Kulla, of Florence, Montana. I used to work for the Forest Service for about 30 years on the Lolo. Worked during the same tenure as Greg. I enjoy both motorized and non-motorized recreation. I have a side-by-side and an ATV, and I enjoy riding them. I also hunt extensively on National Forest lands every year for extended periods. But let's kind of take this proposal apart. Need roads? There's already 370,000 miles of roads on National Forest. And only about 20% of that 370,000 miles are getting the maintenance that they need. That means that there's a $9 billion maintenance backlog on the existing roads. At the same time, the current administration is cutting budgets and staff of agencies that are needed to do the maintenance on the roads. So if roads are built in these roadless areas, who's supposed to lay out and maintain the new roads and pay for them? Need timber? These roadless areas are remote and have low timber productivity. One of the reasons they were designated is because they were never cost effective or productive enough to road in the first place. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been roadless in 2001. And even if they were logged, where's the money and staff going to come from to build the roads, to put up the timber sales, now that the staffs have been cut and the money's all been cut? It's like, WTF? And if a few logs were taken off of them, we don't even have the mills that we used to have to process them. Need wildfire? 85 to 95% of the wildfires are started by people. Building roads into these places increase wildfire risk by increasing numbers of people and machines that start the wildfires. These are also the remote areas farthest away from the wild-urban interface, where fire risk is of greatest risk to buildings, people, and all the things that we worry about with fire. Roading and logging these areas will increase wildfire risks and increase the risk of those fires spreading into communities. Need wildlife habitat, clean water, and solitude? These areas provide valuable wildlife security areas. They're the headwaters for clean water. They provide opportunities for non-motorized rec, solitude, and escape from all the insanity, like from proposals like this.
Okay, we have to move to the next comment now, but thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Randy York. I was born in Missoula, raised in the Mission Valley. My grandfather was a ranger in Stevensville from about 27 to the 40s. So in those days, he was basically a lawman. They didn't log on public lands, and he essentially patrolled looking for rascals that were ripping off trees or fishing violations, et cetera, et cetera. But from my grandpa and my dad, they gave me Montana, and it's in my blood. I worked for the Forest Service until I got blackballed. A ranger did not like me telling me that he was a dumb SOB because I said, you have to shut the roads down once you put that power line through because we got big elk herds in there. And he said, well, roads don't kill elk, Randy. Bullets do. And I said, George, you dumb F, how do you think the damn bullets get there? Okay. So I became a teacher. Right now, I want to very quickly say my friend Charles stole my thunder, but climate change isn't just a problem with the climate. We got a myriad of subordinate things tied with it: biodiversity, ecosystem destructions, lack of resources, on and on and on. And essentially, right now, we are facing an extinction rate of flora and fauna that's 1,000 times any of the places we study the fossil fuel record, 1,000 times faster. At the rate it's going now, and it's rapidly increasing, as is the increase in temperature. Not only is it increasing, but the rate increase is increasing. That's what happens a lot in geophysical situations, biological involved. So if with this rate, by 2050, we'll be over 25 to 30% extinction rate, and that's over 1/3 of the way to 70% extinction rate, which results in, this is a mass extinction. And so this stuff has to stop, and the only way we're going to do this is we got to dedicate at least 30% of our terrestrial and our aquatic ecosystems to preservation now. And by 2050, that needs to be 50% worldwide. Some countries are doing it.
Okay, we
No,
have
we're
to
not.
move on
Okay.
now. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
I think we need to do
2 minutes goes fast, but thanks for sharing the mic so we can all talk.
My name's Dave Scott. In Missoula right now. I was a 27-year wildland firefighter manager, and I was really good to hear tonight your support for prescribed fire and alternative fuel treatments in the roadless area. It's one of the few options really left, because like you were saying, the fuels are, because of the 7 years of suppression, fuels are out of hand. And anyway, I was really glad to hear you support prescribed fire. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start just saying 30 seconds because I hear my triangle is not projecting.
Thanks. Good to see a lot of people from Missoula, a lot of friends here. My name's Jeff Jewell, J-U-E-L. I work for Friends of the Clearwater, based in Idaho. And there's some newsletters here on the table. And in that, you'll find a history of roadless and wilderness and the political machinations that lead us to where we are today. Help yourself. I just want to point out that roadless and wildness are not the same thing. And although my organization does not want to see the roadless rule go away, we want to go farther. We want to maintain the wildness of these places. A lot of what's gone on in the manipulations of habitat, many times in the name of restoration, it turns out it really doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and it just takes the wildness out of it. Oddly enough, there was some piece of paper that said 9,600 acres of logging in roadless areas in the Lolo National Forest since 2001. That's not maintaining wildness. My organization supports a bill in Congress that is based on grizzly bear habitat connectivity and restoring the grizzly bears as a robust population in the northern Rockies.
30 seconds.
And that would protect all the wilderness, all the roadless areas as wilderness in this region. It's in Congress. You can support this. Get a hold of your congressperson. It's called the Northern Rockies Ecosystem Protection Act. And look into that, and you'll see that it has a lot of good things about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's George Nickus. I live here in Missoula. I just want to say that while the roadless area rule was a good thing, it was only a step. As we heard from several of the panelists here, the roadless rule allows for a lot of uses in these roadless areas. Too many. A report that was done in 2020 that looked at just the last 10 years in Montana shows that we've lost 40,000 acres of roadless areas to logging in that 10-year period. Think about what that is in an average human lifespan of 70 years or 80 years if we're losing roadless areas at 4,000 acres a year. It's that sort of slow, steady, creeping degradation of the wilds that the roadless area didn't stop. It may have slowed, but it didn't stop. The roadless area needs to be strengthened, not weakened, not removed. It needs to be strengthened to protect the things that we all think it's protecting, which is wild country. So I would just encourage everybody who comments to the Forest Service to urge them to strengthen the roadless area. There's too much logging. There's too much motor vehicle use, too much mechanized vehicle use. As someone before me pointed out, we as humans are really, we're occupying everything.
30 seconds.
We're occupying every space. And we really need to think about what we can do to allow these places to be wild and leave space for the wild critters that live there, and just quit thinking about how many uses we can put these roadless areas to. Thank you.
Ken Brown, Missoula. I'm the president of the Backcountry Horsemen of Missoula. Yeah, we ride horses, but some of the things we do too is we provide pack support for trail and weed crews in the Bob Marshall, the Great Burn, Blue Mountain Rattlesnake. Recently, I had the opportunity to be chosen to sit in on the Fish Creek State Park and wildlife area. It just seems like recreation was the thing that was pushing everything. There's roads in there, and they want to build more roads. They want to have, not only in that area, they want to connect it to the lumberjack and go through. A lot of that terrain is just too steep. It's very expensive, and you're not going to maintain those roads or trails. It's going to be a continual problem. And as we've heard, the bull trout, it's the major source of bull trout for the state of Montana. So to the west of that is the Great Burn proposed wilderness. To the east is a roadless area. And the Forest Service from the 9 Mile district said, if we build ATV trails in there, we're not going to do that. We're going to build full roads so we can do fire management. Again, these are areas where you have to have corridors for the wildlife to get across the interstate and then into the Great Burn and so forth. So I guess, recreation is one thing, but at some point I think we just have to think about, there's so many of us. Do we need to go everywhere and in great numbers, or can we just be a little conservative about what we're doing? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bill Brown. Some of you may know me. I'm a retired horse veterinarian, so I may have done so much for you, but that's not why I'm speaking. I think we've talked a lot tonight about the why and the what. I think most of you agree that what needs to be done is we need to stop this and preserve wildland. What we haven't talked about that I've heard much of is the how. And it can be done. And I'm going to tell you that because I was part of a group that did that 50 years ago here. Most of you, not all of you, are too young to remember when there wasn't a rattlesnake wilderness. That country was privately held and Forest Service, and it was going to be divided and split up. A group formed in Missoula. It was very representative of the community, and we succeeded. It's up there today, and you should look at it because we're talking here tonight. A lot of people are for wilderness, but not all this wildland. Even if we succeed, it's going to be wilderness. It's going to be other things too. It's going to be used for remote recreation. It's going to be used for wildlife conservation and hunting, and to some extent for probably bicycling and things like that. But all that's important, and we need this kind of group to start that. So every one of you could do something individually, and you should. But I was really encouraged when she stood up here and she said her group has 2,600 members. I doubt that Friends of the Rattlesnake ever had 2,600 members, and we got it done. We got it done because we worked with the Forest Service. We worked with Orwell very successfully. And I should say, too, I was on the board of Friends of the Rattlesnake.
30 seconds.
I think there's only 2 of us left alive. Like Chris makes a 3rd. You came onto that board, I believe. Anyway, go back to your groups. That's what I really want to say. With the groups that are represented here, go back. Each of those groups becomes active, takes this seriously, gets you guys involved, get other people that aren't here tonight involved. We can get this done if we work with the politicians, with the Forest Service, and get a lot of people that represent these communities and these interests, all the interests. We can get it done. Thank you.
My name is Samuel Smart. I was born and raised here in Missoula and in Frenchtown. I am young enough that I was born in 2005. I did not exist when there wasn't the roadless rule. And seeing more of Montana being divided, subsidized, made so we can have a practical economy, so we can try and exploit as much as we can of the environment, I don't believe is going to favor anything. We already have lots of infrastructure built here in Montana, either in major cities or small cities. So my question is, why must we go and try and expand into more areas and try and further the plague of humanity, if that's what you'd want to call it? Rather, why don't we, instead of cutting down more forests, building more roads, why don't we improve on what we have rather than just be like, Missoula's all right, let's just try and build somewhere else. Rather than money necessarily going to trying to build new roads that we won't have the money to fund, why don't we use that money to actually fund roads that do need to be repaired, do need to be maintained, or providing greater services to the people in the cities that they currently live in.
30 seconds.
Not hypothetical towns that could be made past my generation. Why must we expand for no reason other than, we can do it? I believe we should build what we have, not build in areas we don't have.
Good evening. My name's Jake Krylik. I spell it K-R-E-I-L-I-C-K. My family, we own Lake Missoula Tea Company downtown here, so we're a local business. But since I moved to Missoula in 1985, I have been working to protect all remaining roadless areas, not just on the Lolo National Forest, across the Region 1, our region of the agency, and really across the entire National Forest system. So I want to remind everybody about the history that's gone into roadless area protection. There's been a lot of hard-fought campaigns, a lot of us, myself included, that have laid it on the line, butted heads with both Republican and Democratic administrations, forest supervisors, regional foresters, et cetera, because we know that protecting roadless areas is the right thing to do. The most or the clearest manifestation of the public trust doctrine is public lands. And our roadless areas, they're the apex of those public lands. So we have to really put up a big fight if we're going to protect these areas. I would hope over the course of the coming year that we are going to shove this right back in the Forest Service and the Trump administration's face because, number one, all they care about is helping out their friends, political allies, their cronies, okay? So we as the public have to be geared up for one hell of a fight. And so I say that seeing this crowd tonight definitely gives me some hope. But I urge everyone to advocate for not only maintaining the Roadless Conservation Rule that was established in 2001 right after Clinton left office, but to pledge to protect the rule with as much public resistance to what the Trump administration is going to propose. And that's going to take, like I said, that's going to take all of us.
My name is Lisa Ronald, and I work with American Rivers here in Missoula. I've been in Missoula a long time. And if you drink water here in Missoula, you have or you will drink water that's been filtered for you for free by roadless areas. And if you find this hard to believe, I'll give you a concrete example. I was just in Peaburg last weekend. Many of you probably go there to ski. Peaburg gets its water from the Fred Burr Reservoir, which is surrounded by roadless lands. They pump it 7 miles down from the mountains into the city water system. And this isn't just the story of Peaburg, it's the story of Bozeman and Highlight Creek. It's the story of Helena and 10 Mile Creek. So if you live or have lived or will live in a community in Montana that's downstream of the mountains, which who isn't, right? We live in the valleys, and you are going to drink water that's filtered by your roadless areas upslope. And so that's a really important benefit of roadless areas that I haven't heard mentioned here that affects all Montanans.
Hi, my name is Marlena Nelson. That's Marlena. I currently reside in Missoula, Montana, but I've had the luck to adventure and live in many other places. I currently work for the Selway Bitterroot Frank Church Foundation. I'm a youth expedition leader. So my job is taking people even younger than I am. I'm 25. So I work with 12 to 18-year-olds, and I take them into the wilderness. I'm one of those people who was not born when the Rattlesnake Wilderness was established. I'm of a generation who feels like we are mourning a world we didn't even get to experience. And I get to take these young people into the wilderness and have them experience the world as it is right now. And I can't even imagine what it's like for them to grow up in a time that feels even more tumultuous. I feel like I still had a childhood that was relatively calm and free-feeling, where I got to explore and be wild in places like this. So I urge you to also think not just about your past, but about the future. There is a lot of power in young people. There's a lot of energy, there's a lot of passion, and there's a lot of care. So look to the youth. I know we can feel really far away from each other generationally, but there's a lot that connects us, and our lands are one of those places. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Forsley with a Z. I'm here, first of all, commend everybody who's here and who's spoken. I'm here on behalf of, I'm thinking about the courts in Montana and the future of our courts, and I'm an unpaid signature gatherer for Nonpartisan Judiciary. I'll be outside after this, so anybody who hasn't signed and is a Missoula resident or a Valley resident, please come and see me.
Hi, my name is Brian Riggers. I live in Missoula. That's Riggers. Live in Missoula. I worked for the Forest Service for 30 years. About 7 of those years, I was the roadless coordinator for Region 1 and part of Region 4, so all of Montana and Idaho. And so I spent a lot of time working with folks internally on, how you manage forest land inside of the roadless rule. I heard a comment earlier about, somebody said that, I think it was Chris, that the Forest Service doesn't really want this, it's the administration that wants this. And one of the reasons I'm up here right now is just to say that in large part I think that's an accurate statement, but I do want folks to know there are, we have people higher up in the Forest Service who don't necessarily represent what I would say the majority of people in the Forest Service or the majority of people in the public, based on my experience working with the Roadless Rule, want. There was recently the deputy chief testified to Congress on the things that needed to be changed, why this needed to be rescinded. And the three things were efficiency, economics, and local decision making. So just to think about those for a second, the Roadless Rule was established, one of the three reasons it was established to make things more efficient. Before the rule, there was controversy over every project that was proposed in an undeveloped area. The rule largely reduced that, and it's been very successful in reducing that controversy. Economics, it's true that you can make timber sales that result in higher dollars coming out of anywhere. The way you do that is you build more roads and you cut bigger trees and a lot more of them. I don't think that's what we necessarily want. And the third thing, local decision making. There are way fewer forest people, local people now, and most of this stuff, again, from my experience, isn't stuff that local Forest Service people or decision makers in the Forest Service or people in the public wanted. And so I would say that what we need to do is talk to the folks in the Forest Service internally and our representatives and the government officials and say, represent us, don't represent what people above you want you to say. Thanks.
Hi, Ryan Rock. This is more just not a comment for the Forest Service, but a call to action to all of us. But yeah, as others have noted, I think this is an opportunity for improvement. There's the options of keep the roadless rule, repeal the roadless rule, keep it in place, right? But I think we can do better than that, and I think we should ask for more than that, like others have noted, right? These, if anything, to me, this has shown how tenuous the roadless protections actually are. And you can see on the map how a lot of these roadless areas are adjacent to wilderness areas. So I think there's opportunity when the draft DIS comes out, whenever that might be, whatever that process looks like, if there's public meetings, if there's not. But in the comments that we will most likely be able to leave, suggesting that some of these areas get absorbed into wilderness areas designated as wilderness areas will strengthen those protections. So think about that when you're making comments, right? Let's push for those areas to be permanently protected to avoid something like this happening again in the future. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Steve MacArthur, McArthur, and I'm a resident of Missoula, Montana for the last 25 years. I wasn't going to get up and speak, but what has not been mentioned tonight, which I think is critical for the survival of our sanity, is the importance of being able to be out in nature, away from the mechanization, away from the hustle and bustle, so that you can listen to the silence, listen to the natural sounds. One of the things that will keep us sane and in a state which has a high suicide rate, and with our children, especially in terms of gun violence and in terms of their inability to really know they're connected with creation. It's a spiritual issue. I'm a lifetime member of the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and I don't hunt. But any organization that's preserving 10 million acres of land deserves my support. I'm a lifetime member of Sierra Club. I hike. I don't bike other than in town, but I believe those activities, hiking and being out in nature, will restore the soul of our society, and with the insanity that we're experiencing now in our government and in our state and the hate, we have to have nature. We have to have silence, and we have to be able to experience the deep feeling of peace. And I think that's an important thing, and the roadless rule will destroy that, and I'm against it. I hope we'll all support a future that our children deserve. Thank you.
All right, well, that is it for this evening. A few next steps before we depart. There are additional meetings being held this week across Montana. So if you want to come out to more, we welcome that. Tomorrow we'll be in Hamilton, then Butte, Bozeman, and Helena in that order. Again, the transcript will be submitted during the upcoming comment period, so stay tuned for that. And if you didn't get a chance to comment verbally tonight, you're definitely welcome to take a comment card out front and submit that in the box, and the partners will submit that for you. Or, of course, you can submit a comment like any other member of the public on the Forest Service website marked right here. Stay tuned on all things roadless rule related in Montana on that first website, the roadlessrulemt.org. And send any questions to Hillary. She's also in the front here if you have any questions. And feel free to keep this conversation going with your neighbors. There were some really good points that came up today, so feel free to linger here and discuss. But yeah, thank you for coming out, and good night.